Sustainable Development from the Netherlands. And today we're here with other youth and also the Prime Minister for Curaçao, Jaime, the Climate Envoy for the Netherlands, and other speakers too. So during the Water Conference, we have examined how to bridge the financial gap and shared experiences on capacity building. Moreover, at the Caribbean Climate and Energy Conference, the Prime Ministers and Ministers from the Kingdom of the Netherlands discussed a just transition, climate-resilient ecosystems, and finance for climate action. And during this COP28 event, we reconvene to inspire, exchange ideas, and mainly promote collaboration among all participants to explore other modalities to accelerate climate action for the whole Kingdom of the Netherlands, but also abroad. Now I would kindly invite the Prime Minister of Curaçao to discuss how his government is accelerating climate action in the SIDS and what is needed to improve climate action in Curaçao. Prime Minister, please. Yes, you can stand here.
Thank you, Peter. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. All has been observed. Let me start with thanking you very much for joining us in this session as a SIDS. In Curaçao, we experience salt intrusion, reduction of the groundwater, unusual coastal inundation during high tides events, and more frequent flash flooding, heat waves during the month of September, torrential rains and flash floods events during the hurricane season on several islands show that climate change impacts us all. Acknowledging that these impacts put the safety and livelihood of our communities in danger, stagnate development, and drive debt levels higher and higher, bringing back socio-economic development over the years, we grasp the urgency for more innovative climate strategies and action. We all are impacted by climate change, and therefore we need to develop joint strategies in order to counteract or adapt to reduce the impact of these changes. In this SIDS session, I wish to highlight the critical importance of governance, knowledge sharing, partnership, and sustainable financing. In Curaçao, we know that it is imperative to have a strong national vision and a governance structure in place, since this helps to guide all of us in the same direction. We have established the Curaçao Climate Change Platform to advise and guide all efforts regarding a stronger, resilient country, a regenerative biodiversity, and a key player in renewable energy. Inclusivity is key to sustainability. It is therefore that our focus is also on having a broad cultural base in all our policies, co-creating and co-designing solutions, since solutions that may work in a certain culture just do not in others. We also understand that as small islands, we do not have all the knowledge in-house, and that we must bridge this gap with partnerships. Partnerships are fundamental to success, and I extend my gratitude to the affiliated islands, international organizations, and funding agencies who have collaborated with us in our journey. We are aware that climate change does not take into account borders, regions, or constitutional status of SIDS, and the impacts and losses are already here. On the other hand, climate finance has shown to be a bureaucratic and complex process for SIDS to access existing funds. Financial solution should be tailored to the unique circumstances of SIDS, in particular their constitutional status, in order for them to be able to access funds and to achieve effective implementation of climate actions. I urge for action and support of all countries and funding agencies to align their requirements to ensure accelerated access to funds for all SIDS. This will complete the value chain of climate adaptation. Together, we can work on our challenges and opportunities. As SIDS, we have the ability and creativity to converge ideas in excellent and sustainable strategies with available resources. Together, we will make the world a safer, sustainable, and secure place for all. Finally, on this distinguished occasion, let our commitment be an impetus for change. Together, we can ensure that islands have the resources they need to flourish. Join the movement to support water for our islands today, because teamwork is at the heart of great achievement. Mrs. Moderator.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Prime Minister, for your inspiring words and your key action points. I think we have noted them all down, so thank you very much. Now I would kindly invite the climate envoy for the Netherlands, Jaime.
Well, it's wonderful to be here. I have no idea who our neighbors are, but let's be louder and more action-oriented than they are. Meanwhile, I'm looking for my notes. There we go. It's good to be here. The Kingdom of the Netherlands, those who don't know it, there's a low-lying European part, a delta called the Netherlands, and there's six islands in the Caribbean, and all of us are shaped by water. So climate has an impact on us all. We had a wonderful first ever conference in Aruba for the six Caribbean islands called the Caribbean Climate Energy Conference, which we had all of our kingdom present, but also 17 other SIDS nations present. And we talked about the energy transition, about climate finance, and about adaptation. So it was a very good outcome. And one of the outcomes was an MOU with Curaçao, an MOU with the Netherlands with Aruba, an MOU with the Netherlands and Sint Maarten, all on the energy transition. Another thing came out of it was a national growth fund. The Dutch National Growth Fund is now opened up for these three countries for up to 100 to 200 million euros for the energy transition. And another thing came out of it, so many things came out of it, was a roadmap of the whole kingdom for best practices of the islands, and to share these best practices, and I know Albert is busy and many others with this, with the other SIDS. So that positions the kingdom in the sixth discussion with a well-informed and position and dialogue. Lastly, Bonaire wanted a multi-stakeholder climate table to co-create with government, science, with business and civil society solutions going forward. And they had one of those tables already, initiated by Bonaire and led by Bonaire. And one of the outcomes of that was that KNMI, our meteorological institution, is going to do climate scenarios for Bonaire to indicate where the vulnerability is on droughts, heat and floods on the island, and to map them, so that they can then devise better adaptation plans. Now, the kingdom now is well positioned to engage the UN as a kingdom, not just at the Netherlands and the islands. And that's very important. And the first time we really done that this year was at the UN Water Conference. And the Prime Minister of Aruba took a lead role in being there, also representative of the kingdom. And now at COP28, we have a wonderful Prime Minister who I met here, who's been very active representing Curaçao, but also the kingdom here at COP28. And that's something we need to build up and continue, because it gives a bigger platform for countries like Curaçao, but also provides the whole more credibility and more knowledge that you can share, and we make sure that our inputs are always reflecting everybody. I'm the climate envoy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, not just of the Netherlands. And spending time together, I'm reminded of that, and I take more and more charge of also your issues. Now we're here with youth panel, and I see it's fully gender-based, but one side, and we've got the other side is more men. So I think we are quite diverse then in this case, but it's refreshing to see a whole panel of young climate experts, and they happen to be of one gender, but I presume it could be mixed. But it's good to have you here. Keep us on our toes. Come with focus on inclusion to make sure that inclusion in the broadest sense is present, and come with creative ideas. I just turned 51, and on my 50th birthday I received a book from a friend. Said, you know, basically you're already old and your brain is already deteriorating. You know, really focus this phase of your life to, you know, you're in the pinnacle of your career, but to really focus on actually already started handing over the platform to the young people, because that's where your brain is best, your physique is best, and your most creative time in your life is in between your 20s and your 30s. So I would say we're here to listen to you, and looking very much forward to the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jaime, for your kind words. And indeed, we will move to the youth in a minute. But first, I would like to invite Albert, because he's going to enlighten us a bit more about the platform he's building. So, Albert, please take the floor.
Your Excellencies, and follow Jaime, and also my colleague from abroad is joining us today, and present here. I'm delighted to be here because this is where we're going to discuss more about the modalities of the SIDS. And we're not only talking about the modalities, but also we're trying to figure out what the SIDS already can do by their own. And as following on the statement of the Prime Minister about the establishment of the Curaçao Climate Change Platform, I would like to enlighten some of the issues that we have already in place. The first thing is actually important is we have to know where are we going. We have to know our destination in 20 years from now, where we would like to have the island. So that is one thing we normally will discuss in business. We talk about vision. But for sure, it's important to know where we would like to be at the end of 2050 and so on. So that's why we start the multi-stakeholder discussion in Curaçao to elaborate on that aspect. 3 parts that were important, so we set them together and we have combined them in one vision statement that everyone can have their input in it, and they have said to us it's fine. Most important thing is actually starting with making Curaçao a resilient country, resilient island. Secondly, it is important not only to think about the resilience of buildings, the resilience of people, but also the biodiversity on land and also in the ocean that surrounds the island. Thirdly, it was important to highlight, since Curaçao was the first to develop renewable energy in the 80s, that's why it's important to set up back Curaçao as a key player in renewable energy in the Caribbean. Those are the 3 most important aspects of our vision, and we have developed after that, together with all those multi-stakeholders, we have developed those strategy objectives. There are 4. The first one is the impact, as highlighted by the Prime Minister, but also by the envoy of the Netherlands and the Kingdom, Jaime. It is important to know what are the impacts of climate change. We have heard a lot of that, but now it's important also to highlight the health part, because today actually is a special day for the health issues regarding climate change. The health part you will find it in vector-borne diseases. That's why also we have to take time to elaborate on those issues. Vector-borne disease is important, but also due to heat stress. That is also something we have to take into account, because as our population is growing older right now, we have to take care of also of our elderly part. Secondly, it's the impact part that we have seen, and then we will go to the mitigation. For the small islands, we are not, if we reduce our emission, it's a good way of doing it, but the adaptation part is important. But for sure, we have to continue bring renewable energy into the place, because our islands of Curacao, Aruba, St. Martin, but also Bonaire, Saba and Statia, we have plenty sunshine. We have plenty wind energy. So that's why it's important to migrate our energy to renewables. Third part is important also to highlight here is the part of adaptation. And that is something, there is where we need more experience, partnership. We need more funds that together we can do the infrastructural changes, so we will be able to have a better community. But the fourth part is actually about the cross-cutting issues. Those are, if you can see, Jaime has also has told you, he received a book. I didn't receive a book. I received my white hair. The hair is telling you it's time to start mentorship the new generation. Because with that kind of experience you have, you think it's now the time that you have to start bringing the youth abroad. From abroad, bringing them back home and tell them, you are the ones who has to deal with this in the coming 20 years. So that's why in the platform, we also established a special working group on youth engagement. So I'm very fortunate to have the youth today, because there is where we have to start working on it. And most important, we have our ideas how to accelerate certain issues, but they are coming up right now. They have been growing in an other ambience, so they know other solutions that we don't know of it. So that's why I'm very happy to have them here. And with that, that is the idea how we're going to explore other modalities today in order to give us more, from the platform, more ideas. This platform is not only for Curacao, but I'm very interested also that we will be able to combine this effort with other islands, but also with the Netherlands. So that is actually my take here. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to listen to the youth that they will come with excellent and great ideas about how we're going to accelerate climate change action for the SIDS. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I would kindly invite Gianni Giannetta, the chairman of the Greening the Islands Foundation, and he will speak a bit more about mitigation and removals for the SIDS. Thank you. Please take the floor.
Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be here. And this is a coincidence, because I visited Curaçao, I think, before the pandemic, by chance, for a water congress, and I really start loving the island, and now we are starting a cooperation together anyway. So happy to be here. And so happy to listen the Prime Minister talking about inclusion as part of sustainability. I'm also in the steering committee of the Global Sustainable Renewable Alliance, which has a focus on human rights, inclusion, circular economy, which has inclusion as part of sustainability is very, very important for us. And as Green the Islands, we have an index that we are going to apply to Curaçao that includes energy, water, mobility, waste, environment, but we will do also the pilot on inclusion, ethics and inclusion. Anyway, this is something that related to the quality of life of people, but also is not so difficult to understand that it could also attract investors. investors like to invest where there is a good ethic and inclusion environment. So is not so far from our goal indeed. Talking about, anyway, I'm so glad also that Curaçao has a climate change platform. Is amazing. When I was talking with the president of the platform, I say we need to create a committee, a multi-stakeholder committee, to decide about the strategy for the next 20 years of the island, and say we have already a platform. It's there, anyway, is available to cooperate with us immediately, and with the youth involvement. Indeed, this is an important point. So indeed, we are trying to start a journey with the Curaçao really to move. In the concept note of this debate, I noticed 2 points that were discussed. One is how to accelerate finance, and finance is complex to reach anyway, and sometimes you need many consultants, and maybe is not even enough to reach the goal anyway. This is an important point that indeed we want to bring on board on Curaçao to be a pilot for the Caribbean and for the world of the islands and beyond, where anyway our goal is in analysis we are going to do in Curaçao. It's important to engage the financial world, the financial institutions since the beginning. That is the big mistake that many, anyway, project that development does, that the finance arrive at the end. When you have already settled, anyway, you start developing a project without involving the community, without involving all the key stakeholders, without involving the financial sector. This is what we want to make as a pilot in Curaçao, to engage the financial institutions since the beginning, together with the community, to understand the project since the beginning and give input that when you finish and create a teaser is already endorsed by the financial institutions since the beginning. Another point is the capacity building. In the Green Islands also we have created in our observatory a committee, Island Companies Committee. Our goal is really to prepare the local companies to be the first mover, the first leader of the energy transition, the sustainable transition. Youth, indeed, is a part of it, of this movement. Because nobody wants, and I'm sure you, in this goal, 20 years, you don't want only global players, global international solution providers to invest and build your plant, but you want your companies to be pioneer, to be really fully engaged, to co-invest, and to build the plant, to maintain the plant, etc. This is very important. That is our goal in this committee, to join all the industry of the island, the companies of the island, of all the islands of the world together, to have a global representation and to be trained to lead this transition indeed. So this is a very important point. And then I'd like, anyway, here and at the bottom we have a strategic partner. In our goal, we have an amazing initiative, 100% Islands initiative. This initiative is supported by the Global Renewable Alliance. We join all the global industry association of solar, wind, hydropower, green hydrogen, storage, and etc. I was, until a few days ago, Vice President and CEO of Vice President of the Global Alliance of Renewables and CEO of the Global Solar Council, but now I represent the work stream on islands of this organization. And in this journey on 100% renewables, we have a partner, which is the Blue Planet Alliance, represented by a Dutch person, which is Anne Rogers, is in the bottom, anyway, that you will have a chance to know it, to meet, and this really will support Curaçao, anyway, in this journey to become 100% renewables. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have had all the men speaking, so I think we have all the legitimacy to move to the women. From my left side onwards, we have Ridi. She is representing a youth perspective for Sint Maarten. We also have Kiki. She is the youth representative on sustainable development for the Netherlands. We have Oriana. She is representing a youth perspective from Aruba. And we have Muskan, and she is representing the youth for Curaçao. So I think we have a very nice representation of the youth from the whole kingdom. And I firstly would like to ask Ridi how there's a youth perspective from Sint Maarten and how the youth is looking at accelerating climate action in the kingdom, so on the SIDS especially.
Okay, hi. So nice to be here. I was here last year, but it's nice to be with my counterparts from Curaçao and Aruba. So in St. Maarten, we were actually faced with the biggest climate change disaster in the kingdom of the Netherlands, and that was with Hurricane Irma in 2017. 95% of the island was completely decimated, resulting in $2.7 billion in loss and damages, displacing 7,000 people who were climate refugees within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And Sint Maarten is actually half French and also Dutch. It is the smallest entity in the whole world to be shared by 2 different European member states. So in Sint Maarten, of course, climate change is a regular topic to be discussed. And in the event of this disaster, back to back, by the way, we were hit by Hurricane Irma and then shortly after another Category 5 hurricane, Hurricane Maria. So the youth population have felt the impacts of climate change. But unfortunately, I'm sitting here in this seat with a lot of privilege to understand what climate change is and what that means on a daily basis. Most people in the Caribbean cannot make that daily connection that, hey, there is a heavy rainfall event, I cannot go to school because of rivers down the road, because my parents will not drive their car, because the high water levels will then ruin the engine of the car, which will result in fees for repairs. So we're not going to go to school right now, we're going to go 2 hours later. So children will not make it to school on time because of a climate event, but they don't make that link. This is due to climate change. Similarly, we have across the Caribbean issues of sargassum, which is algae that happens because of deforestation in the Brazil, Amazonian rainforest, as well as due to the Sahara dust in Africa. These increase in algae on our shores affect tourism and therefore affect recreational activities and families. Yet people don't make that link, that that is due to a changing climate, warming temperatures, ocean acidification. So youth believe and understand climate change but don't make that link every single day. And I think we have been discussing as a collective panel today that there are certain gaps that we would love to address. Gaps in representation of the entire kingdom, specifically with youth. Gaps on finance, access to finance. And gaps on, someone please help me, there were 2 others. Capacity building.
And knowledge.
And knowledge, transfer of knowledge. So yeah, and then St. Maarten is a specific case because we are speaking of 16 square miles, the Dutch side. The other 21 square miles is French. So we're also talking about bilateral cooperation because a hurricane is not going to come and hit one side of the island. It's going to hit the entire island. And we definitely need to work on that. And I think that is actually a very underserved topic within the Kingdom of the Netherlands, given that we are a European Union and these types of bilateral cooperations actually happen more frequent. But yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, thank you. So you mentioned indeed the gaps in knowledge, so that youth experience the negative consequences of climate change, and they don't immediately make the link in how to act accordingly. So if we focus on what the youth needs, like do they need more education, or do they need more capacity, or what do they concretely ask from you if you go to COP like this? Like what do they want basically? Maybe some other.
Yeah, Oriana.
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
So what youth needs is information. So we are lacking information of what will be the impacts truly defined on the islands. That's one aspect. But another aspect is that when there is information, it's not necessarily accessible to youth. So in that sense, we are, at least as Aruba, we are part of the Cartagena Convention. And as part of the Cartagena Convention, we have some protocols that regulate environmental pollution, for instance, land-based sources of pollution, oil spills, and also wildlife and specially protected areas. Under the protocol of SPA, so specially protected areas and wildlife, we see that there is an agreement that can be ratified that provides transparency, access to information, public participation, and that is related to environmental justice matters. And in this aspect, as a SPA protocol member state, there is space to ratify and sign the Escazú Agreement. Additionally, it is also an obligation of SPA member states, so I encourage all SPA member states to start working on ratifying this agreement, the Escazú Agreement. It would provide mechanisms to invite the public to participate in decision making, but also receive the adequate information to be able to participate. Because at the moment, we have very limited democratic tools when it comes to finding solutions that affect us in such an existential way. And therefore, it shouldn't only be left up to politicians or elitists. It should include more people that will be severely affected by climate change. So that is one aspect. And another aspect is we experience this brain drain on the islands because we stimulate youth to go abroad and build their capacity academically speaking. And what happens is that through history, our identity has been stripped. And because our identity has been stripped, we are not tied necessarily to the islands. I went back to my island after I got my master's degree, but most of my cohort or my group, my age group, stayed abroad, and we should be trying to stimulate them to come back. As was mentioned by Albert, it's time to pass on the baton, but that can only be done when we call our youth to action, and it should come from politicians and the leaders in our country. So that's something I would add to that.
Thank you.
And I think that Muskan can also add more to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm from Curacao, and I'm actually based in Boston right now. I'm completed my bachelor's degree, and I'm working there. And actually, all three of us, we got our education outside of our islands, worked outside of our islands. I want to come back to Curacao. They both are back in their islands, but this is not a unique experience. Many of the youth in our islands, there's a brain drain. They go outside and they're more incentivized to stay outside, build their capacity, work on projects outside on climate change, because all of us were working on environmental issues still when we were outside, because that's what we've always been passionate about. But incentivizing youth to come back so that there's local capacity based, I think that's a huge thing, and I think that's a gap that all of our islands face, and it's not a really unique experience. And so, yeah, I think brain drain is a real problem and can help build youth-based capacity in the islands.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so now you have like the Prime Minister in front of you, you have Albert in front of you from the islands. What would you want to ask them, like to make sure that people are coming back and that you have the local community actions that you need, because they're now here and they can listen to your needs? So I heard already the information gap, so that information should be more accessible to youth. I also heard that the democratic tools to be inclusive is lacking behind. So what do you want to ask them? What do they need to do, basically?
Hello. I think it's really inspiring and motivating when youth that are outside or youth that are in the island see that the government is making positive change towards climate justice. And I understand that there are barriers to do that. There's a knowledge barrier, there's a financial barrier, technical barrier, but the government still has power. And, I've spoken to you about the refinery, but, what does it mean when this old and really hazardous refinery starts again? I think that's really demotivating for people that care about the environment. We know the impacts of the refinery, and basically there's a like 100-year-old refinery on the island, and it's caused a lot of problems, health problems, and it also has a particular history in the island. A lot of people have very personal connections to the island. Their families have worked there, and so it's complicated. It provided employment to a lot of the people on the island, but from an environmental and health perspective, it's not the best. And so seeing positive changes towards that, and active mitigation efforts, active efforts to increase renewable energy, I think that's motivating for youth to come back and continue seeing that there's positive change that they can contribute to on the island.
Yeah.
and-
Dee, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to add to that is that, I see my prime minister, who has been incredibly active in UNGA and making positive, active participation in large international global conferences. But I do see that government is always compromised to choose between old mindsets of development, which in the Caribbean region often means development, hotels, casinos, and all the likes, to fulfill the needs of our single pillar economy, which is tourism. And what we're looking at, and what youth all over the world are saying, is that there's a paradigm shift. There needs to be a shift from old traditional models of development to reconnect with our natural and cultural heritage. Youth have lost connection to that. And I think that in order to progress, like, why do we have to make compromises to fulfill our economic needs by granting foreign direct investment, allowing another hotel like the Westin or the Marriott to come and build to fulfill this touristic idea of mass urbanization, mass tourism, when there could be other ways, other innovative technologies. And to be honest, I see that there's one of the things that the Dutch climate envoy mentioned was water. We're connected throughout the kingdom with water. The oceans are our primary source of income. People come to the Caribbean for our beaches to enjoy paradise. And both parts of the kingdom, the mainland Netherlands and the Caribbean, face sea level rise, the threat of sea level rise. It's interesting to me how the Delta strategy in the Netherlands is considered the best water engineers in the world and have made partnerships with China, Bangladesh. I mean, last year at COP27, the Minister of Water and Infrastructure made a soft launch of the Delta strategy with Bangladesh. Yet that we haven't seen the transfer of knowledge, technical assistance to the rest of the kingdom that is equally faced with lots of floods. This infrastructure can easily be lended. And before we start making global partnerships, why are we not considering doing these partnerships within the kingdom first? And I'm going to pass the mic to Oriana just to elaborate on her thoughts.
Quickly jump on that, because you also mentioned the paradigm shift that is needed within our economic systems. I also want to ask Kiki if she can maybe elaborate more on this and how the youth in the Netherlands is viewing this, to also include you in the discussion.
Thank you so much, Shara. And I first want to mention the different gaps that we talked about. And one of the gaps was the representation gap that we face. Because actually I'm the UN Youth Representative on Sustainable Development for the whole country, of the whole Kingdom of the Netherlands. But to be honest, I've never been to one of the islands. And there's also not that much of connection with the islands. And I have to mention that there are discussions For instance, a few weeks ago, there was a delegation from Sint Eustatius and from Aruba to the Netherlands on a work trip. And we connected and shared some ideas from how can we progress on local youth representation. Because as Jaime mentioned, people between 20 and 30 have very creative ideas, but we need to be empowered to actually share these ideas. And that's why I'm very thankful that we today have the honor to do that, for instance, in this panel discussion. But I think we need to look further than only our future or our current generations and empowering our youth. Because we need to collect in policy that we make today, also mention the interests of youth. But we also need to mention the interests of future generations, because the policy that we make today have a huge impact on the future generations. So one of the very creative ways and creative ideas that Dutch youth came up with is a policy tool, and it's called the generational test. And this test tests, for instance, a policy on making a new highway on very different aspects. So what's the impact on job opportunity in 20, 30, or 100 years? Or what is the interest on biodiversity laws? Or what's the impact on, for instance, CO2 emissions? So this test really lets you think about what is the decision that we're making today has an impact on the future generations. I think that's one of those really creative ideas coming from Dutch youth, and that's now actually implemented in the coalition agreement. In what way we can also make future generations more have a better position in the decisions that we make today.
And do you also think that it helps in a paradigm shift, that to look differently on economic systems, for instance?
Yeah, because when we actually mention the interests of future generations, then we see, maybe the decision that we want to make today has a positive impact on the economic growth, for instance, in the Netherlands. But we don't think about the sea level rises or the impact on the islands of the kingdom. So I think that shift to intergenerational thinking is not only beneficial for the future of the Netherlands, but also for the whole kingdom, for the whole world, because we have to keep in mind all the impacts that our decisions have.
Yeah, well, luckily we have a very intergenerational dialogue today, so I think that's very good. But Oriana, you also want to add to the discussion earlier, right? So you want to build up on what Rudy mentioned?
Well, I could continue on what we're talking about now, which is including the intergenerational gap or the intergenerational impact of decision making today, because what does it do? It makes us more humane. We've always developed in a way that for the sector that we were developing it was beneficial economically, and perhaps for the company it was good, and infrastructure-wise it enhanced connection and mobilization. But we indeed did not consider the other effects. And so I agree that this is definitely a tool that can enhance empathy, actually. And that is the paradigm shift that we should consider now. Empathy. Where is our humanity when we are developing? That's the question in every decision we make.
I think you touch upon a very interesting point, because I think also when you look at the international negotiations, there's often a choice between development or climate action. And I think those two maybe should go hand in hand, that you have a sustainable development within your country, also economically, but that you should consider the environmental consequences that that has an effect upon. So I think that's a very interesting point you raise about the question between development and how you economically have a flourishing development within your countries, but also how you take upon the climate consequences it has. So I want to move to the other side of the room again to maybe shed light on that a bit.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and I think our generation is really thinking about that differently, that maybe money doesn't have to be the ruling way we think about things. Maybe we value life over money. And as islands that are really, really reliant on tourism for our economy, you know, there has been a lot of development recently. Curacao, after the pandemic, actually exploded in terms of tourism, and it's really helped our economy. But some of that is coming at the stake of some of our endemic trees being cut down. And so, where is the balance between development and tourism that does support our island? Tourism is not never-ending growth. I think the concept of never-ending growth has to be retired, and tourism will have a cutoff at some point. But it's also important to acknowledge that it is a way of life right now. There's actually a very interesting and unique project in Curacao. It's by the Riff Fort, for anyone who knows the area. There's a mangrove conservation area, and it actually serves as a tourist attraction for tourists who want to come to see the island, and at the same time it's conserving and protecting our natural environment. And so as tourism is an important component of our development, I think we need to be a lot more creative about the tourism solutions that we are agreeing to move forward on, not just building hotels in every corner of the island and privatizing beaches, but rather how can we retain what makes our island special? And what makes our island special is the environment, it's the nature, it's not money. That's what we've had for 400 years, and you know, it's still there, but it's sad and it's scary to see that it's changing so quickly.
Yeah. May I
Yeah, and
add to that?
quickly add to that,
Just
yes.
one small thing that I'd like to add to that is that because tourism is the dominant factor in our economy that pushes our economy, for instance, I myself started a different type of tourism activity, which is low impact but high value, which is just bring people into nature and talk, like as I'm walking on a hike, low impact hike, because our tourists mainly are Americans, so they're not always very mobile, but we go through our mini forests, and I talk about the whole process from industrialization, how it has impacted our forests and changed and developed our nature. And what happens is people are more willing, they're willing to pay more for a personal experience that is exclusive and high value. It has knowledge, they have a nice walk, and I take them also on snorkeling tours, low impact snorkeling tours. I guarantee that even people who can't swim will be able to snorkel because it gives them, it empowers the person as well who's visiting my island, but they get a different perspective on the island and develop appreciation for something different on the island, which again promotes the empathy, right? We connect in a different way than we used to before by having mass tourism. In mass tourism, you don't connect to the people who are visiting the island.
Yeah.
So this is a different way of approaching tourism.
Yeah.
Yeah, to jump on that, I think now we have everyone in the room here. I think to talk about this input and the youth participation that is crucial to accelerating climate action. I think I also want to ask you guys if you would like to maybe have a more continuous or like on a frequent level have a conversation, for example, with Albert or the Prime Minister to continuously have this way of input within the SIDS. So do you have a view on that? How would you want to organize such a youth meeting, for instance, with the governments of your countries?
I do have
Yeah?
an idea. It would be in the format of debating. Debating is healthy. It helps youth also develop their public speaking skills and reasoning skills. And it's a beautiful way to exchange information and make it fun. It can be a heated discussion, but a healthy discussion. And I think that that's a way we can communicate and reduce that gap between youth and public officials.
And just to piggyback off on that, it's been an absolute pleasure meeting Kiki and Sarah. And last year I met Dennis Janssen, who was the previous UN youth representative. But you know, I had to come all the way to Egypt in Sharm el-Sheikh to know that the Kingdom of the Netherlands had UN youth representatives. And I did not have access to this opportunity. And I felt a little bit bad. But I was able to develop strong connections with this cohort, and we're making steps to close that gap. We're here today with a different delegation, Island Innovation, who made this possible. And we have diversity through the CAS Islands. We don't have the best islands here, though. So there's still a small little gap. But I think for me, it would be really impactful to feel like a kingdom, to feel the bridge between, you know, youth in the Netherlands and youth in the Caribbean, because we all are Dutch citizens. We all are citizens. We hold this tie to the Netherlands, but we feel so disconnected. And I think that for me is very important. So I would like to continue participating in dialogue with you, Sarah, and you, Kiki. And I feel like building that communication, I think, building that bridge.
And do you also need other tools to reestablish this connection?
I think we really need buy-in from the people sitting in front of me. And I think our prime ministers need a little nudge for that as well. So I think that goes a long way. That's not my prime minister. Can you nudge my prime minister?
So if I understand you correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe we should enhance the global partnerships we have. Or not global, but the kingdom partnerships we have.
Kingdom partnerships.
Exactly, okay. Well, I'm looking at the time, and before I give Kiki the floor, I would also kindly ask you to make, or to think about maybe a few action points. So we have talked about a lot of action points, and I hope they have been taking notes. I saw Jaime taking notes. Yes. Yes, definitely. Yes, I already thought of that. Yeah. So the Prime Minister will reflect on your key messages at the end. Exactly. Okay, that's also fine. Yes. Definitely. Okay. Yeah, so before we move into that part of the session, I would also kindly ask you to think about maybe one key action point that hasn't been mentioned yet. If you don't know anything and you have said already enough, that's also completely fine. So before I give Kiki the word, I would like to ask you to think about those action points. So yes, Kiki, take the floor, please.
Yeah, I think I have one of those action
Okay,
points.
then we already start with this part.
And I think a really important and also a very powerful way of engaging youth meaningfully is to institutionalize the youth participation. And in the Netherlands, we, for instance, have youth representatives, not only to the UNFCCC, but also to other United Nations congresses. And that's a very powerful way not to only include youth, but also empower them to actually have impact and to learn about these problems and to empower them to come up with ideas that, for instance, the government is worrying about and problems that they can't solve. So institutionalizing youth participation, for instance, by including youth into your UNFCCC delegation is one very powerful way. But also in the Netherlands, we have once a year or twice a year a talk with climate youth. So not only Sarah and I, but also with other NGOs, for instance, the Youth Climate Movement in the Netherlands. And that's a way we can say the things that we want to say to our minister and our prime minister every year. And that's a way to keep our contacts close. So that's the...
Yeah, so before we continue the round of key actions, I also would like to ask Jaime to have a few quick words because he has to leave in a few seconds.
So sorry, I have to give an interview on American media. But amazing, really good to hear you. Indeed, the institutionalization, Robiette meets twice a year. He said in Parliament, I think, it's even enshrined in obligations to meet the youth twice a year. And so the climate and environment minister meets him. And I made note of all the things. I'm not going to repeat them, But I think that getting and maybe you guys can help as well to get the whole kingdom to know about UN representation and see if we can broaden the scope to the whole kingdom. I think that's a very good idea, and but all the other ones as well. So let's find another moment and sit together and how we can leverage what you've said. Happy to do it with you guys or with all of you later on. Thank you.
Thank you.
This week, and anytime, as soon as possible. Yeah.
Thank you, Jaime, for your participation, and good luck for the rest of your day. Give a round of applause for Jaime. Okay, so really, quick call to action. What does the Prime Minister has to take home at the end of the COP?
Quick call to action. I think you, by being here, can really encourage regional cooperation. Regional cooperation between the kingdom. I think you have access to the Netherlands Prime Minister, you have access to all of our ministers, to the Council of Ministers, and you can talk about this experience, how youth want to be engaged. So I think that call to action, and then the other one is access to financing, but we can elaborate that on better.
Great. Okay. We follow the row.
Okay.
Yeah, shall we do the closing words at the end, or do you? Oh.
Exchange.
That they can give me a statement to bring back home. Okay, I just want to react. I didn't write it. Normally I write everything, but I try to... sorry? Okay. See, I'm trying to memorize everything those ladies of us from the kingdom said. First of all, I want to start about the brain drain. Brain drain, right? There is some things that is important that you all have to take in consideration. Be about brain drain when a person starts to leave his country to study abroad. As soon as the person starts, you're gonna have a debt. You will start with a debt, and sometimes you have a local debt, and now in the Netherlands, they are giving another loan, this duo or something like that. I can't remember the name now, but you will start with a debt. And when you finished, you have to pay the debt. And if you come back to your country, there's gonna be a problem because it's gonna be, your salary is gonna be in guilders. And if you stay in the Netherlands or the States where you are right now, it's gonna be or in dollars or in euros. So for you, it's gonna be more easy that you can pay your debt into the country. I'm gonna give an example right now. Right now in Curacao, we have problem with doctors, specialists. So they don't want to come because for the salary, there's a top right now. They don't want to come because if I come there with all the study I have a big debt, I can pay it. So with other, what are we doing now? Now we are in talking conversation with them, telling them, okay, we are going to bring incentives for you, for the specialists in the way that it's not already done, but it's going to be like, you're going to get half of the loan you have. We're going to pay it. So we are in that. That's the problem you all have right now. And the problem for us is we are not getting people to come back to work. Locally, the study, the level. We need to grow the level. It's not like that. And that's a problem. But the other part I want to address is the part like the refinery. Let's be honest. All people here right now want to get to accelerate way for climate actions. But we, as small development countries, has a big problem. You said that finance is one of them. So the other one, it was being said here also about people capable of doing the work. So for us, it's going to take a more longer way to get where the other countries are. And that's I want to give to you all about the reality. And you said something important about our refinery. Now that I'm more involved, I'm getting other ideas about the refinery because the emission is going to start again and it's going to be a problem. So we want to start small scale. But there is another problem. If you see at how many people we are living like 4 years ago, and how many it's decreasing so fast. I don't know the right name for it, but we have a problem from 160,000. We are now on 148,000. So we lost like 12,000 persons in 4 or 5 years, and that's due because the refinery is closed. So politically, talking about that, to be honest, so we're gonna discuss this politically. Is for the one who can open the refinery is going to get more votes. But when we are talking about the climate, it's a problem. So what you are going to do, what you're going to choose which way. And our problem there, you address it also, is about the information our people is getting about climate change. It's not getting to the people. So they are coming to Curacao to do a research about being green, because we are going in 2045. We have to be 100% renewable. So they are going to do research. And one of the things is the people, our people, I don't know Aruba, I think all of them. No, Aruba is doing more of it than St. Martin and us. People is not aware what's happening in the world about the climate change. They are not aware of it.
People don't know what COP is. I'm sure that we came, they didn't know what COP is.
Yes, you know, so that's the problem right now we all are having into the kingdom. And I announced something last, 1.8 billion euros investment. When I was saying that name, that letter of that amount, it was like, are we going to be part of it as Curacao? Or St. Martin or Aruba, because right now we are not part of it. So we gave 55 million to a group, 88 million to World Bank, and I'm saying, where are we? But I was reading it, because when I'm going home, they're gonna kill me, because are they financing to help us? Let the people be aware of doing the changes we want to do that Albert was talking about. It's not like that. So I want you all to have, when you are bringing ideas forward, that's the message I'm going to give you, to take in consideration the reality we are living in, and it cannot be changed like this. It will take a while, but for you all not going to be like, I tried to change my country, but it didn't work out. To be like, sorry? Yeah, stepwise we are going to get, but you all not going to feel bad about this. So take that when you are bringing good points that you brought for us today, when you are bringing it forward. That's the message I want to give, because the reality is completely different. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And I would also highly encourage to continue this conversation also after the side event, to have more inputs shared. So I would like to move to Oriana to give quick key action points before we have to finish up this side event.
Okay, I'll give quick action points to what Minister Pisas expressed. The first one was knowledge, the brain drain, and people staying abroad regarding development. I say development because it's the perspective we have on development. We are creating debt as a form of development. Why do we have to create debt? I could also come back to my country after I received a loan and pay in, let's say, 5 years by working for my country in government at a lower salary. I actually did this. I just didn't have the benefit of getting my debt annulled because I worked 5 years for the government at a lower salary compared to my peers. I compared it. And so that's one aspect. Yeah, so that's incentive. Then the second one was the issue of doctors, and again, it relates to how we want to develop, but we experienced a crisis that was perhaps a political refugee crisis from South America, where we had a major migration of Venezuelans to our countries. And many of those Venezuelans were actually educated. And our system doesn't allow for us to accept their diplomas and experience. So that is something we can actually change in legislation and policy to be more inclusive and actually have space to allocate educated people in our system to fit our needs as a country.
Okay, thank you. And then we move on to the last speaker. Muskan, can you please also express some key actions that you would like to share with us today?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Riddhi said about institutionalized representation within the kingdom. I think that's really important. I think agreeing with points about capacity and knowledge building, my call to action would be financing. Right now, the kingdom has a lot of projects and funds going to places outside of the islands in the Caribbean. And also the financing mechanisms for if the Caribbean is impacted by climate change are primarily based on huge events happening like Hurricane Irma. And that is just one way that climate change affects us. That is not the only way. The more sinister impacts of climate change are the slower ones. Heat, flooding. Curaçao has been seeing that for the past couple of months. People are not going to be able to adapt to it getting hotter. Our island is not adapted to flooding happening. And so there need to be better mechanisms for the slower impacts of climate change, not just a shock happens, we have to declare a state of emergency, and then we get money. We need to think about how do we, sustainably give money to or provide funding to our islands so that they can be resilient for heat, flooding, sea level rise. So my call to action would be finance.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're moving closely to the end of the session. I want to highlight a few things that we have heard today. I'm most obviously missing some things, so I have written a lot of it down. So we're taking it all with us, I think, today. But I just want to quickly mention some things that were very present in the discussion. So we mentioned knowledge and information. We have to increase this within the SIDS, but also across youth who are coming back to the islands. So knowledge and information about climate change is crucial to accelerate climate action. Moreover, we have to highlight the paradigm shift that we have to take into account regarding economic systems. We have to think differently about economic growth. And also a theme that came up a lot was the regional cooperation within the kingdom. We need to feel connected again. We need to highlight empathy. We need to highlight local youth participation, and sufficient and healthy democratic tools are needed for this to highlight this cooperation and participation. And moreover, we highlighted what Kiki mentioned, the intergenerational discussions and tools that we need to keep up this conversation, because it's very nice that we're all talking here today with each other for 1.5 hours, but we need to continue this conversation also after COP to make sure that all your key actions are heard and put into practice, or at least are put into practice within the reality we're dealing with today. So I actually want to ask the Prime Minister, Albert, I don't know how you want to define the task, but I would kindly ask you to make some closing remarks about the session and what you're taking home from this session today.
So thank you for coming. As you heard, we're talking about the new era, where we're going to discuss further about how to collaborate. The most important thing is actually about capacity building of islands. And if you have seen, most of the students will go abroad to do their study. And the question is, the capacity, they are there. But you have to bring them back home on the islands. It's not only within the kingdom we will see that, but also on the other islands in the Caribbean. So it's important to find ways together with the government. Like the Prime Minister already said, there is already some ideas coming with incentive for the students that can come back home and work there at home. So that's a beautiful message I take home with that, because there is where we have to start. Also, representation on island level, with the different platform on different island, but for sure within the kingdom. And we have also right now that Jaime has mentioned that we're going to have this week a smaller session to discuss how we're going to build on making some kind of conference together or meetings together where we're going to further develop the youth participation in climate change, and also at national level, how we're going to reach out to the different actors at national level. So that is actually my takeaway. I'm very happy that we could have this session here in Dubai and continue the good work, I will say, to the youth representative of the kingdom. And for sure, there will be more years that we will ask you to be part of the solutions. Thank you very much. I give you back. Thank you also for our very good last-minute moderator. And for that, I will give you back the word.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you for your very kind words, and very good that you have some takeaways that you're taking home, and also some takeaways that you will continue working on during COP. So thank you so much. Thank you to the panel as well. Thank you to the Prime Minister for being here and making the time to speak to the youth. Thank you, Jaime. He has already left, sadly enough, but he was here and he contributed very well. So thank you to Jaime. Thank you for speaking today and sharing your experiences from your foundation. So thank you so much. Now I would like to end this event, but not the conversation, because we haven't finished the conversation. I kindly ask everybody to keep up this good work and keep up the conversation also after the event. So thank you so much, and please stay seated for 5 more seconds, because then we will end the live stream. Thank you so much, all.